In this podcast, we're going to talk about the general differences in body fluids that are found in the body, the percentages, and basically what make up all the fluids in your body. So your average adult body is going to contain about 42 liters of fluid. So think of a liter as being roughly a Nalgene bottle. Also keep in mind that this is not pure water that is just floating around in your body. It's a mixture of a lot of different aqueous solutions. Remember that aqueous is how we describe when we have ions dissolved in water. So they're going to carry nutrients from the cells to places they're needed. We can classify body fluids into one of two classes. They are either intracellular fluids or extracellular fluids. So if it's an intracellular fluid, these are inside your cells. This makes up about 28 of those 42 liters, or 64% if you're interested in doing the math. In that intracellular fluid, there's a lot of protein. Within these cells is where a lot of your metabolic reactions are going to take place. Extracellular fluids are found outside of the cell, and this makes up 36% of all the fluid that is in the body. And we can further classify extracellular fluid into interstitial fluid and the bloodstream. So interstitial fluid is the fluid that is in the space between tissue cells. It's also the fluid that is moving in your lymph vessels, and that's going to make up about 10.5 liters. Or 25% of that total amount of fluid. And the bloodstream has a lot of extracellular fluid as well. That extracellular fluid is in the plasma. So 3.5 liters in your body is just plasma. Between these two, interstitial fluids and your plasma, they're really similar in composition. The big difference between these two is that plasma has more protein in it than your interstitial fluid. If you are following along with the math, you'll have realized that those percentages don't add up to 100. So what are we missing? We're missing all those other fluids, and we lump them all together because they're different from each other and they don't fit into a nice category other than miscellaneous. So 3% of the fluid in your body is going to be made up of urine, digestive juices, cerebrospinal fluid, aqueous humor, as well as synovial fluid. So it's kind of a catch-all for the rest of it. Transport of the substances in the body really relies on the materials being exchanged from one body fluid to another. In order to do this, we want to take nutrients into our cells and waste out of our cells, and that's going to rely on that aqueous solution that's in all of our body fluids for some particles to dissolve into or out of our cells. For my visual friends out there, this is basically how those fluids break down in the body. 64% is intracellular fluid. That's found inside each of your cells. 25% is interstitial, 8% plasma, and only 3% is that catch-all miscellaneous minor components of fluids. All right, I like this visual as well because it shows us that the composition of extracellular fluids is very different from the composition of intracellular fluids. And we can look at the different dissolved ions that are found in the body, and we can look at the different compositions of those. So there's a lot of potassium in intercellular fluid. There's a lot of dissolved phosphate in there as well, and a lot of proteins in our intracellular fluid. Looking at our blood plasma and interstitial fluid, as we said back in our notes, these guys are very similar in composition. And so looking at the amounts of sodium, the amounts of bicarbonate, the amounts of chlorine ion, these are all very, very similar to each other. So plasma and interstitial fluid are very similar until we get down to the composition of protein. And we see that our plasma has a lot more proteins in that fluid than our interstitial fluid.